Welcome to More Than Miles, the podcast created to look deep into what it means to be a runner and endurance athlete. Our episodes are filled with real stories from real runners, elite to the everyday athlete. We bring together healthcare providers, athletes, and dive deep into topics that matter most to runners. I'm Dr. Kate Mihevik-Edwards, physical therapist, author, athlete, and complete coffee addict.
And I'm Dr. Kacy Sinders, physical therapist, athlete, and pun expert extraordinaire. We're so passionate about changing running culture to improve the health, wellness, and fulfillment of our endurance athlete community. And we hope that these conversations inspire you to focus on putting your health first so that performance and PRs can follow. Now let's get to the show. Hello, everybody. Welcome to More Than Miles. We, Kate and I, are here to discuss our experiences that we had at the most recent Boston Marathon, which was about a month ago now. So we both had time to recover and process our experiences because it was not easy for either of us, was it, Kate?
No, surprisingly, it was not. We kind of talked about doing this a few weeks after the marathon, and we honestly just needed more time to recover mentally, I think, and physically from the event. And it's really interesting. We were talking about this because this year I was in the medical tent at the finish line, and you ran it. What year is this? How many of you run now in a row?
Oh, this was number 7.
Number 7. Okay. So Kacy's run 7 Boston marathons, which is a big deal. We were talking before the podcast that I don't remember all the details of the course. I used to train on it when I lived in Boston, which was like 20 years ago. This is really dating me, but 20 years ago. And then I ran the race, but you've run 7 in a row. And that's pretty incredible. And then this year, I decided that I still wanted to be involved. It was more like I was ready to be involved again. And I decided to do the medical tent at the finish line, which was pretty cool.
Yeah. And I'm really glad that you did, because it was fun to get to share a part of that weekend with you, which was, we'll talk about this later, but that like who I shared it with this year was really what made this Boston more special than any of the 6 others that I've done. So I am, really glad that you were there and part of my weekend as well. I know that you were leading into the race, just really applauding the BAA's organization around their volunteers and their medical tent. And something I've always been impressed with, having done and been part of the race weekend, they just have it down. And so I would love to hear like what kind of the preamble or the part before the race looked like for you.
Like you said, what I was blown away by was the just sheer size of the event and how many people they have to mobilize in the right direction and get them to work together and be there at the right time. Like there's just so many pieces and so many cogs in the wheel for an event like this. And there were 30,000 runners, give or take a few, for the marathon this year, but there were over 10,000 volunteers. That is ridiculous. That is a lot of volunteers. And of those 10,000, there were 1,800 medical volunteers. And so the medical volunteers were at 2 finish line tents. There's an elite tent, and then there were also places along the course that the medical providers had to be. But even before we got to the race, we had so much communication. You have to apply to be a volunteer, and the deadline is by December of the year before, so 2024. And then you find out, I think I found out in January, but I'm not exactly sure. And then they give you an assignment. And from that point on, they're communicating with you regularly, who your team lead is, and then giving you videos you have to watch. And I had like a 6-hour training that I had to go through as a medical provider that went over things that all of us in race medicine and running medicine definitely need to know, but a lot of us don't see on a regular basis. So, we're PTs. I'm not really in the ER. I'm not really treating or looking at patients that are having acute cardiac or heat illness on a regular basis. That's just not what I do. So having that training ahead of time is really pretty incredible. And it's really a lot of training. And I'd seen these things before because I, am and have been in medical tents before. And I've also been a recipient of medical care, unfortunately, in tents. But the amount of education was really mind-blowing. And then you get there and then you meet very early in the morning. You have to be there by 6 a.m. and you're in this room with 1,800 medical providers. And
Really early. I think I got out as an athlete, I got out of bed at like 5:30. So that's early.
yeah, so I was up at 5 because I had to get there, you had to eat, all the things. So we were there early, early. And what's really cool, and I don't know, I know you kind of see this because you have to get on the buses. Maybe we can talk about this together. But what I really love is that before the race starts, when the sun is coming up, and I, obviously had my coffee because I wasn't running, my coffee in my hand, I'm walking down the street and I'm seeing all of these volunteers. Some of them were up at 3 or 2 in the morning setting up, and like I'm going through the barriers and just seeing all these people that were involved, and then starting to see as the runners showed up. It was just a really cool experience, that piece.
Yeah, I'm sure because the city just starts to come alive, right? As more and more people are making their journey to the buses and just like things kind of grow over time. The volunteers are incredible. Like they're everywhere. They're telling you what to do, all this stuff. I think, everyone's human. I think that, no one does anything perfectly. They did change the bus loading process this year, and I don't think it worked as well. So I gave them some nice feedback about that, and hopefully they make some changes next year. It's just impressive how they get all the athletes on the bus out to Hopkinton, which is, roughly 26 miles away. It's such an endeavor from a process perspective. Where did you have to report to in the morning?
Yeah, so I reported to, I forgot the name of the hotel, of course, but one of the hotels near the finish line. And just walking in again, they have all the signs where you're supposed to go, welcome volunteers. I mean, you see signs like physical therapy, athletic trainer, physicians, like all the different kinds, EMT, all the different kinds of providers that were there. There are little different sections that we all kind of were supposed to go and check in. And then you meet your team leader, you get your credentials, you get your jacket, and different volunteers have different color jackets, which is really, yeah, it was, I kind of didn't really, I saw that, but it didn't hit me until I got my jacket, and then everyone in the medical, in the big, huge auditorium had the same one on. So that was really cool. And then, you sit down and you start to meet people. I met a ton of PTs. It's interesting. A lot of them were from the Boston area. I was definitely an outsider in terms of, where I was coming from Atlanta. But it was great because I lived in Boston for 10 years, and I worked at Spalding Rehab as a PT aide before I even went to PT school. So it was cool because I, know those schools and kind of some of the people, and I talked to a couple of them beforehand. So that was really interesting. And then, after everyone checks in, we have a big meeting and a briefing before the race. So everyone's there and they're presenting in the front of the room, and they're talking about the race course, and they're talking about the temperature, and they're talking, they go over some of the major things you might see again, like heat illness is a big one that we go over. And it's really dependent on the weather. So this year we had a great year. We had really low incidence of utilization in the medical tent, which is awesome. So the more we're standing around, the better it is. But the weather impacts that a lot. We could have, 10 times amount of people in the medical tent if the temperature goes up 10 degrees. So it was a really interesting thing, the way that they briefed everybody. And then we left and we split off to our respective areas. And so I was in the finish line tent, Dartmouth, which is the first one as you come across, where all the elite athletes actually walk through, which is really fun after they finish. So I got to see all the elites as they finished, which was really, really cool because I'm like, hey, to the ones that I knew, you know what I mean? So nerdy.
Yeah, no, I would do the same. Absolutely.
You try to be cool, but I'm not that cool.
Me neither.
And then, you go to your area and I was on the heat deck. So the heat deck again is about heat illness. So there's, the way that they set it up, there's all these different sections in a tent, and then the heat deck and the ICU is kind of up on the side. That's where like really the really difficult things happen. That's where, the tough cases are, is where I was, and then next to the ICU. And so then we practice as a team. So it's really cool because it's interdisciplinary. So there were cardiologists, there were ER doctors, there were ATCs, there were PTs, there were nurses, and then we had like medical scribes who were taking all the notes the whole time so that we could create a medical chart for the patients in the tent so that they would have information when they left, or if they had to be transported or saw a doctor, follow up with a doctor, they got those notes. So, I mean, and there's even an announcer in the front of the tent announcing so everyone knows where they're going. The amount of organization is incredible. And it's like it's a command center. So it's a command center, and everyone has a role and everyone has a job, and there's a hierarchy, and it's pretty amazing.
Wow. Yeah. So I imagine, so let's say like an athlete comes in the tent, right? Is there like a triage, like someone's there, decides where they go next, so on and so forth? Or what does that look like when an athlete actually walks into the tent?
Yeah, so they come in different ways. So sometimes they're walked in, sometimes they're in a wheelchair, sometimes they are brought in on a stretcher, depending on what happens and how bad they are. The patients that I saw, they were all out, so they had all passed out. And so because they were pretty sick. And when they come in the tent, they talk to the announcer and the people who direct where to go in the tent. And then your lead lets you know, hey, we've got somebody coming in, team 1, be ready. And so in the heat deck, we had, I think, 7 or 8 teams. And so we were team 4, and when team 4 had to go, we had to be ready. And so for us, our patients came in a wheelchair or a stretcher, and they were usually passed out, or perhaps in and out of consciousness because of their high core body temperature. And then we put them on the cot because we had to have something to move them into the ice tub. So with heat illness, you have to submerge your patient in a tub of ice until their core body temperature drops. So we had really high core body temperatures. I mean, if it's above 104, then you need to submerge them because it's life-threatening. And we did that. And so, I mean, we had someone even as high as like 109. And when they get submerged, you have a team of 5. Someone's controlling the head and talking. We're making sure to talk to the patient, even though they're unconscious. We really want them to know that they're cared for and that we're there to help, so that, when they wake up confused, we're doing our best to like give them as much information as we can, because it's a really scary thing. I mean, I've been on that side before, not for heat illness, but passing out. And then there's someone at each arm and each leg, and then there's a scribe that's managing it. So you have to take their temperature. It's actually a rectal temperature because it's the most.
For people who are not on video, I squirmed a little bit.
Yeah. So the ATC puts it in. We do a good job of like making sure no one sees, all that kind of stuff. But you have to do it because it makes a huge difference, because if you take the temperature on the head or in the mouth, it's not as accurate. And 1 or 2 degrees can make a big difference on how your organs function. And so you have to do it that way. So then, throughout the time, they're usually in there for several minutes, and we're calling out the temperature. And then once they get back down to like 103, we take them out. But as they are waking up, they're confused, sometimes combative. There's water everywhere, sometimes bodily fluids, we were thrown up on. Like, it's not, what I would say is that it's not glorious in any way, shape, or form. And it's completely exhausting. I was so tired, but it was one of those things. I haven't really been in the pit, if you will, in a really long time because of how I treat now and what we do. But it was a really great place from like a learning perspective, working with team, all different interdisciplinary people, and giving back to the fact like we were literally saving lives that day. And that's pretty cool.
No, I mean, it's really freaking cool, right? Not only the ice baths, but the experience.
Yeah.
Whenever I think about, I've been in a medical tent one time, which I know is less than your experience. But it never ceases to amaze me how much we're able to push our bodies to that point, right? Just the desire, the drive, the lack of self-preservation to actually push ourselves to that point, right? And I don't know, like, did you like think about that at all, or were you just like locked in, taking care of the patients?
So
in your reflection, I guess.
I had a lot of time to reflect in the beginning, especially when we were going over protocols and procedures. And I was talking to the cardiologist because, they talk about all the reasons why people could end up in a tent. And what I have, ACM, which used to be called ARVC, arrhythmogenic cardiomyopathy, is one of the reasons people will come into the tent unresponsive. And so I know what that's like. And in the Philadelphia Marathon, I remember waking up, hooked up to the EKG, and I was definitely combative. I mean, that's just my personality, right? So I was like, where am I, trying to rip things off, like confused. And so I remember being in that place. And because I was surrounded by that, it really did bring back a lot of memories. But it was also really good for me to be on the other side and be able to support the people that were going through a similar experience than I've been through. And I do that on a regular basis just by talking to patients that get diagnosed with what I have. But in this particular instance, this is such a very scary moment in a runner's life, is if they're in the medical tent with something very severe, and to be able to support them in that moment is a really big gift.
Yeah, I mean, there's, something to be, the healthcare provider that you wish you had on the other side, right, at that point. And so I can't think of, yeah, and you went better for the job.
Thanks. I will tell you that it's a really long day, and I knew it would be a really long day. And I know that people may not believe me, and perhaps this is just time and me not remembering what it feels like to run a marathon as much as I believe I remember. But I think I was more tired working the medical tent than when I ran the marathon, because I was, on my feet from 5 a.m, and then you don't leave until 5:30, 6 o'clock at night. And you're on in this adrenaline phase for so long, because you're so hyper focused on the patients in front of you. Like, you're doing nothing for a while, drinking coffee, talking, getting to know your colleagues. Then you are on, and then you're done, and you're like, what just happened?
I mean, yeah, it's more like, it's not only physical, but it's emotional, it's focus, it's mental, right? And of course, there's those things they're involved in running a marathon too, but it's very singular focus, right? It's like, I have to go from point A to point B, and whatever I encounter on my way, I have to deal with that. But this is like, a whole smattering of things that could have happened, right? And so you're having to go through all these decision trees and these processes. And so, I mean, I totally believe that. I no offense, but I much rather would have run the marathon.
Yeah, I actually, at the end, I was like, man, maybe I would like to run. I mean, I can't, but maybe it would have been better to run the marathon, because even leaving the tent, I was so cold, because my hands are in ice. I had throw up on me. I'm pretty disgusting. I'm just disgusting. When I leave the tent, and that's fine. I knew that, and it's fine. But then having to meet my friend who's going to pick me up, because I stayed with my college roommate since I went to college in Boston. I stayed with my college roommate while I was there, and she had to pick me up. But walking through the city, with all the runners who are barely able to walk, in their heat sheets or whatever, and then I'm like a zombie trying to find my friend to pick me up. But it was a great experience. I really did. If I'm accepted in again next year, I'll do it again.
Just like marathoners, you forget about how terrible it was, and you're like, sign me up for that again.
Best day ever.
Best day ever.
I was so exhausted. I felt like I was going to pass out, but let's do it again.
Yes.
Yeah, that's right. Exactly. So maybe it's just, I actually wonder what percentage of medical providers in the tent are runners, because you probably need the same mindset and drive to do both sides.
Yeah, you have to be able to understand. I mean, it's just like what we do in the clinic, right? Like a PT or a healthcare provider doesn't necessarily understand the mindset or the process even of running, is not necessarily going to know how to handle the situations and emotions that come up if you don't do it yourself, right?
That's right.
So I totally believe that at least, yeah, most of them have some experience, or at least a spouse or something, I don't know, who's involved in running.
That's true. The only thing was, I really wanted to see you finish. And I realized every year I'm like, I'm going to go watch Kacy run the race. And the whole weekend was really fun. And we can talk about that after you talk about your experience. But then I was like, darn it, I'm not even going to see Kacy run, because I was in the throes of it when you were crossing I couldn't leave the tent. And it didn't even occur to me, in my mind, I was like, well, maybe I'll go out and watch her when I know she's about to finish. But yeah, no, didn't work out.
No, you had a job to do for sure.
That's right. So why don't you talk us through, like, I want you to talk about, and I said this earlier, I want you to kind of talk about the course and like different parts of the course, especially if someone hasn't done the race before, because it is fresh in your mind, but kind of give us like a rundown of your experience this year.
Yeah. So when I first think about my experience this year, I actually had a buddy to ride the bus with. I had one of my really good friends and training partners here in Atlanta who was also racing. Shout out to Brooke. She might listen, she may not. But we got to go on the bus and share some of that nervous energy together, and it felt so much better than previously when I'd be by myself. I would always meet friends on the bus, because that's everyone, if your bus buddy wants to talk, you do. If they're a little nervous, gotta read the room kind of thing. But so that was great. But like I said, they changed the system of how they loaded the buses this year, because it used to be that they had a suggested time or a preferred time for each wave. So red, white, yellow, blue, what time you should get to the buses or what time you should load the buses. And previously you could show up anytime you wanted. So if you wanted to get there really early and get on the bus and get out there, you could. This year they didn't even let you through until that time. And so it created this huge bottleneck and kind of backlog. And I think their thought process was that they would be able to kind of move runners through better if if they filtered who went into the buses. But for me, it really made us get like much later to Hopkinton than I usually am. I usually have about an hour in Athletes Village, and when we got off the bus and were able to hear the announcer, they were already calling White Wave to leave Athletes Village. And so we hadn't done anything, we still had our throwaways on, we hadn't gone to the bathroom, nothing, right? So we kind of tag teamed, and this is the other reason why I'm glad I had someone else with me. I grabbed all the throwaways and we took turns taking the bathroom, going to the bathroom and all that stuff. Ended up being completely fine, but definitely was not sitting around at all. And yeah, I was thinking about you in the medical tent, or at least your experience this year, and it was much about 10 to 15 degrees cooler this year than it was last year. And while no, I did not end up in the medical tent last year, but I definitely had some degree of heat exhaustion last year. And so was very, very thankful for the weather this year. We had a little bit more of a breeze, even if it was a headwind, it kept you cool. The humidity was really low. So, and I always tell people, this goes for any race really, but you have to just accept that the weather can be anything on race day. And no matter how hard you train isn't going to change what happens on race day or what the weather does. So you have to be ready for that and know that maybe you won't get to completely showcase your fitness or whatever it is. But anyway, I think the weather was really good this year. I was pretty pleased with it. It was very sunny. And when we were on the bus, I looked at Brooke and I was like, oh, did you put sunscreen on? And she was like, no. And I was like, uh-oh. And then I remembered that there's a bunch of people who live right along where you walk towards the corrals, and they live in Hopkinton, and a lot of the families will be out there with tables of last minute things, last minute water, Gatorade, food, sunscreen, Vaseline, whatever you could need. So I was like, okay, I'll get it there. But then we were so stressed, I just completely forgot about it. So long story short, right side of my body got absolutely roasted in the sun. I have a very clear delineation from where my heart rate monitor was on my arm. So I have started out with a very nice summer base marathoner tan.
That's really funny. My one of my college professors lives at the start line. So I used to always see her, and Matina. I used to always see her at the beginning of the race when I would run. She would come out and meet me. And then I have another person at the start line, the McNamees. So I was their nanny in college, and I actually got Gary into running, and now he's completely obsessed with running. And he's an entrepreneur, and he created Outside. What was that company? Where he would video the courses, remember? Yeah, Outside Interactive. That's what it was. He created that, and then it got sold. But anyway, because he even came to Atlanta and rode his little scooter. What are those called? The scooter. Do you know what I mean?
The one wheel things?
Yeah.
or like one of something
I don't know. But anyway, it was like some kind of scooter electric something. He rode in front of the race the whole time and recorded the Peachtree course. So I saw him when he was
That's
there.
cool.
And so that was like one of the courses and races that he had on his platform. But anyway, kind of a side note, but it's funny because the beginning of the race, I always saw those people before I went. Or
Wow. So nice to see some friendly faces before you go,
it is, isn't it?
Yeah. So anyway, we ended up making it to the corral. We had enough time. Didn't feel like super rushed. We stood around for 5 minutes or so. But it was funny. I earlier this year in Houston, my shoe came untied during the race. And so I like kneeled down and like double checked my shoes. And it was just kind of like I was laughing to myself. I actually took a picture of it because like you're just looking around and you just see all of these legs and the super shoes, and it's just like, such a weird sight. Um, so yeah, and you're like, oh, like look at all the Nikes, look at all the,
Yeah.
everyone's got their shoes on, and I always like to joke it like it smells like fitness and stress.
That's
Uh,
fitness and
you got
stress.
these like peak athletic, like peak fitness, and just everyone is just like buzzing with energy, right? And so anyway, our wave goes off, and as the very famous advice goes, is it's very downhill in the beginning, particularly the first 3 miles, pretty sharp downhill. Like you almost feel like you're breaking yourself a bit. And so like keeping your excitement reined in, focusing on your form, making sure you're getting your feet underneath you, you're not stomping on the ground is really key. And Boston it's a major race, so it's pretty crowded, and you have to really watch like what are the runners doing in front of me, make sure you can see like the roads because these are old Massachusetts roads, right? So
Yes.
there's a lot to really focus on there in the beginning. And so I'm always, thinking just like controlled, just let it be easy. And this is how I feel about a lot of marathons, is that just let it be easy for the first half or so, right? And so anyway, it was so crowded, and you could see we actually ran into a third friend at the start, and so we were all kind of like watching each other because we would have to zoom and zig and zag and all these things around people, making sure that everyone was still there. We were like a couple of ducklings, like trying to run through.
Were you guys all around the same pace and did you have the same kind of finish time goals?
We did, yeah. The third friend that we were running with is a little bit faster. She's a former Georgia Tech athlete, so we figured she would leave us at some point. And she did. She ended up running an incredible race, but we did get to run together for about 10 miles or so, which was pretty cool. But yeah, we were just kind of like keeping an eye on each other. And I think my favorite, and I know that New York is like this. I haven't personally run New York Marathon before, but like just there's this feel like a shift in every neighborhood. It just every neighborhood feels different.
Yeah.
And I think it makes the race go by quickly. It's interesting. It's fun to notice. It's one of my favorite things about the course. And so I feel like, the towns kind of get bigger as you keep going. So like I said, like Hopkinton is really, really small. So is Alston, and it has this quaintness to it, sort of. But like people are out there like with their coffee in their driveway. All the kids are out, the dogs. It's very family oriented. And then, as we'll say, as we get closer to Boston, you're going through the universities and drunk college students and the screen.
I was one of those once.
I mean, you got to, right?
I remember watching it and drinking on the side of the road, like in my freshman or sophomore year in college. That's when I really found out about the Boston Marathon. I had never thought about it before, but yeah, I was definitely one of those.
Yeah, there's just this crescendo of energy, and it just shifts from like, yeah, small town family to like rowdy Boston, right? And I love it so much. And they always say with Wellesley, like you hear it before you see it, and it is. It's just this high pitched. It's called the Scream Tunnel. I had a friend who was like, I didn't realize that the Scream Tunnel wasn't actually a tunnel.
Oh.
Yeah, no, it's just they're all, because they're all on the right side of the road, and these girls are
Yeah.
just screaming, and so it sounds like a scream tunnel, but it's not actually a physical tunnel.
You can feel it too. It's not just the sound, like you can feel the vibration, I feel like, of the screaming in the road when you're running.
Yes, you can. And there's a little like that like half a mile leading into it is kind of quiet, which I think is why you hear the Wellesley girls screaming so much, because there aren't as many folks out there. It's one of the quieter parts on the course, and you just know it's coming. And you get kind of excited because you're like, all right, I'm halfway. And I love downtown Wellesley. I think that whole square is really cute. There's a lot of really great like signs that people were holding up. There's always, the typical like you run better than the T, like the T train, or never trust a fart past mile 10 or something like that. I don't know.
Oh,
You
God.
get a lot of repeats, but they never cease to amuse me when you're exhausted. But yeah, I was like feeling the energy. I was starting to feel a little tired already, actually. And we don't need to get into my personal race, I guess, if we don't want to. But I was like, okay, I need to pick up some energy here. So I like go over to the right side of the road and I like gave all, like not all the girls, but like I would say like 75% of the people I could high fives and just tried to like soak that in. And I talked to Brooke afterwards. She's like, I saw you do that, so I did that too.
It's amazing.
Yeah. So got lots of high fives, which is super fun. And then, yeah, this is when things start to kind of shift in the race. You have a steep downhill getting out of Wellesley, and that's like mile 14 or so. And that's where you're kind of checking to see how the quads handle the downhill. So I always know to like kind of assess my body there, and definitely started to feel, yeah, that familiar downhill ache in my quads. I'm like, shoot. Um, and last year I had a very similar experience, but I was like, I had a different response. I was very angry. I was like, I've done so many split squats. I have run so many hills. Why the heck? So my quads hurt so bad. And this year I was like, you know what? Okay, this is just how it is. This is just how it is. And we're just going to keep going. So I didn't have the same emotional reaction to it this time.
Well, that's good. That's good that you grew on that
I
front.
grew.
And
Yes, I
and
grew.
just imagine how it would have felt had you not done all those split squats and had you not trained your body to run downhill.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. I don't know how people run Boston without doing some strength training. I know they're out there, but so yeah, I always kind of check in with myself 14 to 16, and then things just start to go up more than down. And heartbreak is always, or like there's 4 hills in the town of Newton. And I think the first 2 are actually like punchier, so kind of steeper, kind of gets that burn in your legs a little bit. And so the last one's called Heartbreak just because it's the last one. And so it's like you go over these 3 hills, and then like finally this last one, they say classically breaks your heart, right? But the nice thing about each of the hills is that there is a recovery period. So there is a downhill and sort of you get a little bit of a break, if you will, between each. So as a runner, you got to take that time to like mentally reset, get ready for the next one, shake out your arms, all of those things. It does make it apparent how tired your quads are because you do have to go downhill and you're like start to realize how crampy everything feels. And heartbreak is always really exciting, but I feel like this year was particularly there was just a lot. There was like signs, there were like big, like we're talking like billboard style signs that Heartbreak Hill Running Company had put out there. I mean, I felt like people were like like 5 or 6 deep. I don't know if this is true, but I feel like there were like people on ladders, like you could just see all of these people who were there cheering for you. And there's this big sign that said, right by Heartbreak Hill Running Company, that said, "You're not going to let a hill break your heart." And I was like struggling so bad. I felt like I was just chugging up these hills. I saw that sign. I'm like, yeah, I'm not going to do that. Let's go. Come on.
So that was definitely a well worth it motivational sign and placed in
Yeah.
the correct spot on the
Yes.
course.
Yeah, it is.
That's really cool.
It was great. Yeah.
That area is where also a lot of my friends when I lived there would hang out and cheer me on. And I remember the first year I ran Boston, I just ran it slowly with my running partner because we were just wanted to soak up the experience. We weren't worried about our time. So like I stopped and like one of my friends was massaging my quads on the side of the road because she was a PT. It was before it was while I was in PT school. She was already a PT. And so she was like, "Oh, I think you're getting some IT band syndrome." And so she was like working on my quad on Heartbreak Hill. Is so funny. And I was like totally fine with it because I really said like, I think I'm going to just run a 4-hour marathon this time. Like, or maybe I'll just, you know what I mean? Like I was completely unaware of my time. And I was just like, I stopped along the way and hung out with people because I knew so many people on the course. I'd be like, "Oh, hey," it wasn't just like a high five. It was like a roadside chat. the first time I went through. So it's really funny because when I think of Heartbreak Hill, I didn't do that the other two times I actually ran. But when I think of Heartbreak Hill, I remember that in particular. And I think about those experiences of just like hanging out on the course.
Yeah. I mean, that's the fun of it, right? I mean, there's so many reasons why, someone might run a marathon or participate in an event that doesn't have anything to do with time, right? It's only a small part of the experience that you have. And so like that is like just as valuable or maybe more valuable than any PR race that you might have ran, right? And so I love that you had those experiences, especially I think it must be nice to take it easy through. I had one I didn't mention I coached 4 athletes to race this year's race. I had 2 that were more going for an experience and 2 that wanted to run fast. And one of the ones that was there for just the experience was like, the hills weren't that bad. And it's like, well, it is different when you're truly racing. But yeah.
It's completely different when you're trying to go for a time and when I mean, because the way I had thought about it that first Boston was I made it, you know what I mean? I qualified, I was fast enough, I was so excited that we were just like, we're just going to do whatever. And then the next 2 times we were pushing, I pushed myself and yeah, I don't recall it being as quote easy. Not that it's ever easy, but yeah, that's really funny. One year Brian ran with me and I wanted to leave him because he was running too slow. I felt bad because we had just gotten engaged. And so I was like, oh, you can't leave the guy you were just engaged to. What kind of wife are you going to be if you just leave him on the course?
You're a runner. That's what you are.
I know. And then he was cramping. And obviously that's because of his nutrition wasn't right. But he's like, will you rub my calf? And I'm like, or like, will you stretch out my calves? And I was like, oh, do I have to? And then I was like, yes, you have to because you just got engaged.
You said that I knew it was going to be his calves
Because of his running form.
of his running form.
It's so crazy up on his toes and I can't help him because he won't listen to his own wife. Yes.
Yeah. Well, that's very nice of you as a fiance to stop and help him out.
No, that's true.
Very nice.
All right. So you made it through the hills then.
Yeah, made it through the hills. My boyfriend was at mile 21, which was pretty neat to have him there. And there's this big sign that says I think it says like you have summited Heartbreak Hill, Newton loves you or something like that. And like going under that banner is like, all right, like this is the best part of the course. I tell people all the time, the last 5 miles of the Boston Marathon are my favorite 5 miles in all of running. I was kind of feeling sorry for myself because yeah, I kind of fell off pace. The hills did feel harder than I wanted, but I just got so excited to run these last 5 miles because they're my favorite. They're what I visualize when I'm tired and training. And so I was really excited to get there. And you know that it gets easier after that. You're done with the hills. Like all you got to do is make it to Boylston, and then Boylston just doesn't exist in terms of distance because it's so exciting. It just doesn't even matter anymore at that point. So yeah, we get through there. The crowds just keep building. There's a lot of like music and noise and like things going on, a lot of signs, things to watch. You're starting to like parallel the T train, the green line. So you kind of see that come by. You're not running quite as fast as the T. Not quite. The T is slow. The green line is slow. But they are running faster than my marathon page. So it was like a very interesting experience. I'd heard athletes and other people say this before, and it's not like I've not had this experience, but it was like very apparent, this mismatch between like my cardiovascular capacity and my legs. Like my legs were just hurting so bad and I like couldn't run any faster. But like I heard Taylor Swift's Love Story at mile 22 and was kind of like singing along, and like I felt like I'm like running down and I'm like kind of like not like singing really loudly, but like I was like imagining that I was like doing karaoke in a bar full of drunk people and they were all just like soaking in my energy, right? And so you have to do anything you can, Kate, to get through these sometimes.
Oh, you don't have to tell me twice. I know. Believe me, I know. I've run plenty of marathons and sometimes the mind games that you have to play, especially at the end, are unbelievable. I used to have all sorts of things that I would do that were completely insane. I don't think karaoke is insane though, by the way. I think it's lovely. And if you had been belting out Taylor Swift, I don't think anyone would have cared.
No, I don't think they would have either. So I had that, and then we had our running joyfully cheer squad at mile 23 and a half. So I was really looking forward to that. Like I was just starting to kind of break down the race at this point. You can see the Citgo sign from there, but obviously, or not obviously, but as the saying goes, you can see the Citgo sign pretty far out, but until you actually pass the Citgo sign, that's when you have a mile to go. So people get really excited to see it, and you should, because you are nearing the end, but it's like a mirage. It's like running
Yes, it is.
it's like running on the beach, and you're like, I'll just run to that building, and you run for like 4 miles and the building's not any closer. So it's very much like that. But one of our coaches was there, and she like screamed at me, and she was like yelling my name, and she's like, you want this, you want this. And I like, because I was like really struggling, like having a good time, but I'm like, God, my legs are just not going anywhere. But like it like clicked another little gear for me, and I was like, okay, like let's just empty it out. Like let's do the best we can the rest of this race, right? And so again, I think this having the support this year was it meant so much to me, and it made it just so much more special. So yeah, you get through, you go under a little overpass that says Boston Strong, and I always take a moment to reflect on 2013 when I was there that year, and luckily was safe and unaffected by the events of that year. But I always kind of it triggers a little bit of a thought in my mind for sure. And then you take that ride on Hereford, left on Boylston, and like I don't know. It's an experience I want every runner to have. Like the street just opens up wide, and like the city's just like welcoming you in, and it does. Like people are like, gosh, it's so far. You're so tired, but the same, like I wanted it to be over so badly, but I also wanted it to last forever.
Yeah.
Like I just wanted it to last forever because it's amazing. Again, like 3 to 4 to 5 people deep, everyone just like cheering for you, or you tell yourself they're cheering for you,
They're
right?
definitely cheering for you.
They're cheering for you, and like you can see the finish line, and it's just like you have so much time to like reflect on the journey to get to the start line, and then everything that happened from the start line to where you are now. And it's just, yeah, it's so worth everything, right? And so yeah, was able to get there, and I tied my course PR this year. So wanted to run a little faster, but I think that's what we always want. And overall, I was like really happy with the experience that I had. And like I said, just the people I got to share it with. And so, but yeah, you finish the race, and again, all the volunteers are there. You can see the medical people who are just like, they are just milling. They're looking for people who are dropping, right? And so I definitely saw some of that. And you kind of hobble through, you get your medal, you get your food, you get your space blanket, they tape the space blanket for you. I was very tired, right? So I was going to pick up my drop bag. So I'm like waiting there at the bus, and all these people are just like cutting me, and I like just don't care. I'm just like standing there, just like hoping they'll ask me what I want. I'm like,
that is the exact opposite how I would have been. I would have been so tired of it. Stop cutting me.
And finally, like someone pokes their head out of the bus, they're like, what number? And so I was like, I forgot what my number was. I like looked down, I was like, this is my number. Yeah, and then went and hung out in the public garden, which it was a nice day to do that. It was sunny and not too cold, not too warm, and I had some clothes to put on, and just got to kind of like enjoy the finish, which sometimes it's cold and rainy and you just want to get into a hot shower. But it was nice to be able to soak it in a little bit this year.
That's nice. Do you know one of the reasons why they have you keep walking after the finish line and the chute is so long is because a lot of people drop if they stop walking, because the pump system in your calves, for instance, stops pumping. So you have postural hypotension. So you just drop. It's not dangerous. It's very benign. But if you don't keep walking, it's very possible you'll go down. And so that's what why a lot of the medical people are there, is to help prevent those people from dropping. Obviously, that's the most common reason. Now, there's other reasons, of course, like cardiac or heat illness, and they have eyes on us, but just making sure people keep going. So when you hear all these volunteers that say, keep walking, and it might annoy you, because it used to annoy me all the time. Like, I'm walking, I just ran a race. But it's so that you don't pass out and have hypotension.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I hadn't really considered that. I thought it was just for congestion reasons. So that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, I had never thought of it either, even though
Yeah.
it makes complete sense. But when they were talking about it in the briefing, I was like, oh, yes, that makes sense.
Yeah, because in 2016, I sat down on the curb and a volunteer comes over to me and she was so sweet. She was like, "Hi, do you need a wheelchair?" And I'm like, "No, I don't need a wheelchair." And she's like, "Well, I really need you to keep walking." And I was like, "Okay."
Yeah, but that's why it's
It makes
because
sense. Yeah.
yeah, so that obviously congestion too, but it's for your own safety.
Yeah, makes
So
sense.
I just thought I would, yeah, I wanted to bring that up because it was one of those pain points as a runner that I was like, why are they making me do this?
Yeah.
But it's
Okay,
funny.
makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I've been so lucky and privileged to have run the race as many times as I have, and I know that the qualification system is not perfect, and there's a lot of ways they could do better. The feeling, the vibe. I guess I'm not too old to say vibe, right? The vibe of the whole weekend is it's just great because there are people who have worked so many years to get there and they're finally there, or like everyone's got this like purpose and this reason, and the whole weekend is just filled with that sort of energy. Like people who, they've worked so hard and for so long and have, tried and failed and tried and failed, and they're finally there. And I just love to absorb all of that because I think it's like so inspiring and amazing. So
It is.
hopefully things get a little smoother in terms of qualification.
Yeah. I mean, it is a fun weekend. That's for sure. Now, I feel like I was there maybe a little bit too long. I think it's because I ended up getting sick. So I got COVID from being in Boston. I don't know when I got it, but I didn't feel it until like the end of race day, really. So I'm sure I didn't get it in the tent. I probably got it at the expo or somebody somewhere else, but I didn't know because I didn't feel it. But when I got home, I was down. And it probably had to do with too, because I was so not sleeping and really busy and all the things that probably hit me hard. But it was a really fun weekend. And we went early. You and I went early because because the running nerds that we went to Laura Green's show where she did a running nerd game show. And that was really fun.
So fun.
It was really fun. I particularly liked the Dr. Google category.
We both were like silently trying to answer the questions for the
We're like, ooh, IT band, telefemoral. It was really hard not to yell out the answers, wasn't it?
We're so insufferable. Yeah.
Yeah, it was pretty bad. And of course, I got there early so we could be in the front row.
We were right front and center. Got to see Dina blindfolded eating a salad. It was great.
Yeah, it was really pretty funny. It was you could tell that Laura was nervous because it was the first time she'd done it. But as she got going, she all of a sudden the nerves went away, and she's always funny, and it's always a good time to listen to her. So yeah, it was a good thing. We had a good time.
It was really fun. I did enjoy being there long. I think I decided I always wanted to get up there on Friday. I used to always go up Saturday. I think I do want to go up Friday every year. Just to get there before things get super chaotic, so you can do a few things without the masses being there. But yeah, Thursday was definitely early. I personally love Boston, the city, and that whole weekend there. And I'm walking around because I'm seeing all my favorite things, and I have been there many times for the race and a few times otherwise, but so I know the city pretty well, and I'm like talking about how much I love it, and I like turned to my boyfriend Chuck, and I was like, I just really, I think I could live here. And then he's like, you need to come here in January so you stop believing that you could live in Boston.
He's so right. So when he's right, I used to live there. I lived there for 10 years, and there was such a bad snowstorm one year that we couldn't run. And usually I would run even in the snow, no matter what, right? But it was so bad we couldn't run. So we put our snowshoes on and we snowshoed because we're kind of, crazy, need to exercise. So we snowshoed through the city and then got on the tee with our snowshoes and went to different areas. And yeah, you've got to go in the winter if you really think that you want to live there. And also it's I do love that city, but it is an interesting place. Like if you don't go to college there and you didn't grow up there, it is kind of hard to make friends. I mean, I went to college there, it's fun. But that's what I've heard, is that because it's such a close-knit community, that it's a little bit different going there as an adult.
Yeah, totally makes sense. I mean, I've been to New York City and Chicago, and I still think Boston is my favorite city I've visited. Maybe because of the marathon. I mean, I definitely know I have got my blue and yellow colored glasses on when it comes to the city of Boston, but I do like the way it feels, and I know I wouldn't like we had 2 snowstorms this winter in Atlanta, and I was so cranky. Like
You were cranky.
I'm so cold. It was so cold all the time. I'm like, I have to put 2 jackets on to walk my dog for 5 minutes. This is ridiculous.
Where I was like, yay, there's snow. I can't wait to go outside.
The snow was fun. Okay, the snow was fun. Did enjoy that. But yeah, like that second little snow we had was icier, and so it was a little bit more treacherous in terms of trying to get around and do things. And yeah, I couldn't imagine having to train the whole winter on a treadmill.
No, it's hard. It's hard. But there are a lot of, like you said, Boston is one of my favorite cities. I love it. I still have a ton of friends there. My college roommates are there. This year I went the day after, but usually I fly in, I get an Uber, and I go straight to Chinatown, and I get the number 99 on the menu at Faux Pas store, and I eat that soup like nobody's business. It's my favorite food of all time. This time I waited a whole day before I went. And then I got it. And then I got to eat leftovers for 3 days. I ate the same thing for 3 days. I also went and got, one of the cannolis that I love, because I just couldn't help myself, There's so much nostalgia for me when I go to Boston, because living there for 10 years, and so many people that I love are there. So yeah, it's a really fun time to go. And we get to go in June. We're going in June for the Female Athlete Conference. So that'll be fun again. And it'll be nice out.
It will be nice. It'll be June. Yeah. I'm excited to get to go to Boston twice. But that's the thing. I think I'll just visit when it's nice.
Right. Well, this has been really fun, getting to talk about our experiences. And I think it was cool that we were both there, both two of the 4 precision PTs were in Boston representing, and we got to represent both sides of the equation, which was cool. And then we even got to cheer on, last note, we even got to cheer on some of the elites. You cheered on some of the elites in the 5K, and I cheered on some of our elites in the mile race, the invitational, which was really, really fun. And we had one of our athletes get 2nd place, which was cool. So overall, I think it was a great weekend for us.
Yeah. Well, let's do it again next year.
Let's do it again. All right. Well, thanks everybody for joining us. And as always, we love you.
We love you. Talk to you soon. Bye.
Thank you so much for listening today. We are so happy that you're here. If you enjoyed this conversation, share it with a friend. Even better, share it on social media, because sharing is caring. And the more people we can reach, the better.
Another way you can help us out is by leaving a review on Spotify or Apple Podcast. So give us those 5 stars and tell us how awesome we are. Really, we love to hear how awesome we are. To support our work financially, you can also join our Patreon squad at patreon.com/morethanmiles, where for a few dollars a month, you can help us keep the show going and growing. This season is sponsored by Fast Bananas. Why buy multiple subscriptions made for everyone when you can have one specifically crafted for runners? Fast Bananas has online yoga classes, strength training programs, meditations, recipes, communities to ask questions, and so much more. Check out Fast Bananas at fastbananas.com or follow them on Instagram at fastbananasrun. Don't forget that training is so much more than miles.